Thursday. Welcome into another Unemployed with Mike Schaefer, and it is a Building Blocks Thursday. Building Blocks Thursdays, of course, are brought to you by our friends at Bubbles and Blocks Child Development Center. 3 convenient locations across the capital city. Bubbles and Blocks is well suited to handle your child care needs. The center boasts strong curriculum for the children, helpful staff that have your child's best interests at heart, and as I can attest, as my son can attest, when we lived in Lincoln, the most nutritious and tasty food your kid is likely to come across at a daycare. And again, that matters. You don't want them coming home and eating you out of house and home because they're not getting good enough food to eat at daycare. So that's a big deal. It's like the training table for the Nebraska staff. You want to make sure that they're taken care of. And, similar to that, much like recruits value stability, so do parents, so does Bubbles and Blocks, where its management team has been in place since 2019, with some of them even having started when the daycare opened in 2013. Spots are available at all 3 centers. Get your child enrolled today. Give them a call at 402-328-0404. Once again, 402-328-0404, or shoot them an email at info@bubblesandblocks.com. All right, it is a Building Blocks Thursday, and that means our guy, Tim Verghese. Some of you introduced to him maybe for the first time last Thursday. I don't know how, I don't know why, but some of you, it was the introduction, and people really, really enjoyed it, Tim. So, of course, we had to bring you back, as we will every Building Blocks Thursday. That's what we do here on Thursdays. We talk recruiting, we talk portal, we talk adding to the roster. We got a little bit of everything, and we got a busy show here yet again. And Nebraska was busy last night. They got a commitment for the 2026 recruiting class. What can you tell us about Nebraska's newest addition?
Yeah, Tanner Vimble, quarterback out of Las Vegas. A bit of a interesting one, just in how this all came together. You look at the stats, you even look at the tape from his senior year, and you wonder a little bit how he was just off so many radars. But was initially planning on enrolling early and signing early, but was basically said it wasn't in the cards for him to enroll early. So not wanting to make a decision that he wasn't 100% certain about, decided to wait and hold off from signing in December. That decision paid off. Nebraska, in their search for a 26 quarterback, came across his film in mid-December, started picking up communication. But it sounds like things really picked up when Nebraska went out to Vegas for the Las Vegas Bowl. Matt Rule got on the phone with him, and the relationship started from there. They'd been in touch pretty much daily leading up to this past weekend, where he made an official visit, and then he actually committed before leaving campus. Then made that commitment public on Wednesday night. A true like dual threat, and a guy that you look at the tape and then you look at the direction this quarterback room is going. Anthony Calandria, Daniel Talon, TJ Lateef, and now Tanner Vivable. They want to be a true dual threat kind of system, and Tanner's maybe the fastest of the quarterbacks in the room at this point, the most dynamic with his legs. This staff is compared him a little bit to Calandry, just in terms of what he can do with his legs, how he can extend plays, and what he can do off of that. Really creative playmaker. Of course, you want to see the accuracy improve, his completion percentage. Not ideal at this point, but I mean, you could say the same thing for Calandry coming out of high school, and he's steadily improved that. He's another one that I think that number needs to improve. But again, for this guy, there's no expectation at this point for Tanner to be starting this year or competing for the starting job this year or even next year. This is a guy that you stash, you develop for 2-3 years, see what he looks like on the other end of that. And a guy that, at least for year 1 and year 2, Nebraska wanted a live camp arm, someone or like kind of scout team arm, someone they could make active, they could hit in practice, and someone that could actually challenge the defense. Tanner fits that. They had Jalen Gramson kind of in that role last year. They had Marcus Davila kind of working that role last year. With where offenses are going, with where their own offense is going, this is a name that makes some sense, and a guy that, again, at least he's going to need some time to put the weight on. But in terms of what he can do as a playmaker, it's not going to take very long for him to make a name for himself in practice.
Tim, I think one of the things that has been sort of hard in the transfer portal, and especially at quarterback, where you just see guys go in every year, you have somebody like this that is a a stash and development guy. Is this someone that you think is willing to hang around for a couple years to be developed? Because that's sort of where the value comes from is, you're not expecting. I think a lot of things would have to happen for him to play in a football game in 2026 for Nebraska, in any kind of meaningful way. So you're hoping that he's sticking around for a couple years to develop. It aren't Do you find these guys to be sort of rarities in current college football with sort of what we have in the portal? And then with what you know of Tanner and the conversations you have, is a long-term thinking part of this whole process?
It seems to be like the on the second part of that question of just is the long term. Like I think he is thinking long term here. He wanted to, again, this for him. This was an opportunity to extend his playing career and an opportunity to develop under an offensive coordinator and a quarterbacks coach that he's grown to really like and trust. I think both of these the last two quarterbacks they've taken now and signed out of the high school ranks, TJ Latif and now. Tanner, who is expected to sign next month. Both of these guys, came in or are coming in with the expectation of there's no expectation year one and you were going to be here and develop for multiple years. Um, it's tough to find, I think, just in the sense that, like, but at the same time, a lot of guys say that in high school. You have a lot of guys that say they never want to hit the transfer portal. Oftentimes, what I've found, for whatever reason, those guys end up being the ones that after 1 year suddenly find themselves in the portal. And that's always weird. But coaching changes factor into that, and you can never really predict, but. At least the expectation coming in, both of these guys with TJ and now Tanner, fully anticipate spending multiple years in the program. I'd say even the next guy coming in, Trey Taylor, the 27 quarterback commit, he's already had those type of conversations with the staff. Their mentality as a family is, Trey's father, Trey's parents want him to stick around wherever. If he ends up sticking and signing with Nebraska, he shut down his recruitment multiple times, and he stated as long as Matt Rule, Dana Holgerson, and those guys are at Nebraska, he's coming. They want him to give whatever program he's at, as long as that coaching staff is there 2+ years. They want him to give that program to have an opportunity to develop a year in the program, compete for the starting job, or whatever happens. And after 2 years, whatever happens, happens. But I think that should be how you see most recruits at this point. And that's, I think, how at least Nebraska, some other programs are as well. Of like, hey, give us 2 years, give us an opportunity to show you what we're about, what we can develop you to. And after 2 years, if neither one of us see this is a right fit, maybe we can move on. But 2 years is kind of where things are at. What I've noticed on the quarterback position is guys value things differently. I mean, we had guys even this portal cycle that entered initially with the expectation or the plan of finding playing time, or announce that like, hey, I'm leaving with the expectation of finding playing time. But then they go somewhere where they're not going to be the starter. You had that multiple times. You had Deuce Adams leave Louisville. Now he's going to Wisconsin to back up Colton Joseph. Maybe he could compete for that job. I think Colton Joseph is going to win that job. Hussein Longstreet from USC transferred with the expectation of going to find a starting job and said he's heading down to LSU to presumably back up Sam Levitt. So you have these guys now where teams are building for the future, but quarterbacks as well. I think especially quarterbacks that on the lower end of this are don't really see an opportunity to necessarily play in the immediate future. They just want to learn as much as they can and get live active reps in practice. And like for example, for Tanner, the practice tape he's going to get at Nebraska, that's never going to be made public. But if and down the line he hits the portal, that practice tape will do more for him than, say practice or even playing tape at a lower level program, just because of the level of competition he's facing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Real quickly with the quarterback room as it sits right now, and it's kind of a massive change from where we were in 25. How do you feel about Anthony Calandria, TJ Latif, Daniel Kalen, and Tanner Vibable as your four quarterbacks here in this quarterback room going into 26?
I mean, you have to feel a lot better about where the room is coming out of last year, where things were at,
Yeah,
mid-December with Dylan and Marcus hitting the portal and where it's at now. I mean, still, is the top end of the room as good as it was when Dylan was in there? Maybe not, but I mean, we never really saw the top end from
of
Dylan
Dylan, yeah.
to, so it's you were kind of banking on, kind of the hope and the promise of what he can be. But you have guys now in Calandria that obviously his season and is the expected, the favorite to win the job. TJ, who's gotten some experience. Danny, who comes back a lot more seasoned and honestly bigger than he was when he left this program. I think he looks like a different quarterback now physically. And he's gotten some playing time. He's gotten gotten an opportunity to see some live reps in the ACC. It comes in with some season and a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. Like he's going to make some noise in this QB battle. I don't necessarily know if he's going to win it. I still think this is going to be ultimately Clayton's job to lose. But I think Danny's position to make some noise and gives Nebraska two good options and honestly gives Nebraska some flexibility to tell TJ, hey, take a year off. Let's redshirt, let's develop, let's dial in your accuracy and some of the things you do well. If they want to go down that route, I think all these guys are going to compete for the job here in spring and into fall. But I think now you have that conversation where you can maybe save a year of TJ.
Absolutely. Let's switch over to the portal here for now. And Tim, I mean, we're coming up on it. You've got the deadline is there a time on Friday? Is it like a late afternoon or is it what is the alleged time where the portal closes? Is it
Yeah,
the end of the
it's
day?
I think it's going to end up being end of the day, but you still have guys that can submit
It'll
on the
be like
16th.
into
You have like
Monday.
24 to
Yeah.
40. Yeah, so it'll go through Monday. You're still going to see some visits, at least for Nebraska, till through the weekend, and maybe a few more that end up, not necessarily enrolling here in the spring, down the line. But yeah, we're coming up on the end of it.
Yeah. So where do you think we're at right now? Like what's sort of the latest that people should know about what's going on in the transfer portal with Nebraska's efforts as they're trying to put together, at least for this spring, the sort of roster that they're hoping to move forward to into the 2026 season?
Yeah, so obviously D-line is still the focus. They have Owen Stoudemire on campus today, Boston College defensive tackle. Going to be a 6-year senior, right around 6'1", 292 pounds. Stout saw a good amount of playing time in 2024, and an uptick in playing time, put career highs in tackles for loss and sacks. Played in 3 games, had 5 tackles this fall before an injury kind of robbed him of the rest of the season. So has that medical red shirt for next year. So he's back for one more season. Hopped in the portal yesterday, and Nebraska worked fast to get him on campus. This is one that could move quickly, like Jasir Whittington, who entered the portal, immediately popped up at Nebraska, within hours of hopping in the portal and committed a few days later. Think this one could be on a similar timeline if the medicals check out. That's going to be the big question with him just coming off that season-ending injury and his medical history in general. And then Terrence Green was expected on campus today. Defensive lineman out of Oregon, you're like big body, 6'6", 330, and a guy that, has some options, is no longer expected at Nebraska today, but is going to visit Bama tomorrow, Cal on Saturday, and tentatively expected at Nebraska on Sunday now. We'll see if that visit happens. Of course, he was third in line in the rotation for Oregon this year behind Amari Washington and Bear Alexander. Both those guys coming back for Oregon with that. Green had hit the portal and could simply follow Tosh Lupoi down to Cal. Bama's obviously going to make a case for themselves. Nebraska, and I said this before. I think I said this on last week's show too. Nebraska's, if they don't, it's not going to be for a lack of resources or lack of not having the money. They are very competitive when it comes to defensive linemen, and they have a connection here. He played high school football with Dylan Rogers at Cy Woods down in the greater Houston area. Of course, Nebraska's expected new defensive tackles coach Corey Brown originally from Houston as well. So some ties there, an opportunity there. But ultimately, I think this is going to come down to, do they get him back on campus on Sunday? This is one where I don't think a visit, like a formal spending a lot of time on campus, is important. He's pretty familiar with the staff. He's been in touch with them through the dead period since he entered the portal over the phone. He's pretty familiar with the campus from Dylan, just talking to Dylan Rogers. And the staff has done well to just let him know he's felt comfortable, or he could feel comfortable on campus, and let him know the opportunities on campus. It just didn't work out on Thursday for whatever reason, but they're expected to get it back on Sunday as of now.
So I do have one kind of question related to, especially with the Stoudemire coming in. I mean, this is the guy, and you know, I know that Terrence Green is bigger at 6'6", 315, but Owen Stoudemire kind of fits more of what Nebraska's been bringing in. don't want to say undersized defensive tackle at 6'1", 292, I think is what he's listed, but they have been a little bit smaller in that regard. Is there a concerted effort maybe with how Nebraska is going to play with the defensive line that they don't seem to be pursuing as many space eater types, if you would, the Damian Daniels nose tackle types or whatever sort of you want to refer to it as? It just doesn't feel like they're trying to get or have been able to get those guys that just eat up offensive linemen.
I think in the second part, just haven't been able to. I mean, they had Horace Lockett on campus. They were expected to get Terrence on campus. They're working to get one of these, kind of 310 plus, 320 plus pound, true kind of space eaters along the interior. But they're really just looking for one. And I think the rest of it, just you look at the way Rob Orridge plays and how he wants the front to play. He wants guys that are athletic enough to stunt, athletic enough to loop around and do different things. He penetrates gaps differently. It's not necessarily just about kind of eating up space. It is about shooting gaps and doing a little bit of both. But he recognizes it's a leverage game, and I think that's where they're going here. Where if you don't necessarily have the big space eaters, you're going to play with good leverage because you're always going to be lower. You have guys that, in Jasir, and if they close on Stoudemire, guys that are kind of bowling balls in a sense, like tough to keep in front of you, tough to, keep from penetrating the backfield. In that sense, but I mean, yeah, I mean, I think there should be some concern. I think some fair concern if they're unable to bring in one of these true big bodies. But they're trying. I mean, they're really trying to get one of these guys in town. And
And everybody
if it's
is. I mean,
green, if
it's a
it's
yeah.
everybody is. And that's the thing, and that's part of this too. Is everybody? I wasn't joking. I mean, when the portal first opened, I kind of joke, but like if you're 300 plus pounds with a little bit of experience, like you can hop in the portal and get yourself a raise. Like that is just kind of where things are at right now. I mean, Keanu Davis expected to visit Miami. It just kind of tells you what people think of him, but also too like where the market's at right now. Like you're looking for guys that are unpolished that have a little upside to him. Even the schools like Miami at this point are looking for whatever edge they can find here when it comes to hunting for defensive line talent.
How do you feel like things have gone for Nebraska in the portal so far? I mean, we're at the end of when players are going to be able to enter here, tomorrow, Saturday, the weekend, whatever we want to call it. And then Nebraska has been very active. I mean, they've changed over parts of their roster, maybe not as people might have expected, but how do you feel like they've done overall?
I think it's a bit of a mixed bag, just in terms of relative to considering what people expect relative to what I think the staff wanted to do and what they have done. They wanted to fix the offensive or retool the offensive line. They've done that. I think they've done a pretty good job of that as well. Brendan Black is your kind of splash land, but wouldn't think too. I mean, I think Pablo Benga's a good win that you kind of trust. I would say this too. I mean, relative to what they've had at the position compared to now, I think there should be more faith, and I understand it's something that's hard to come by at this point, but a little more faith in Jeep Wade's ability to develop, just based on his track record and what he did at Georgia Tech with the room he had there, and even previous stops along the way. I think there should be some faith in his ability to develop these guys into better than what their tape suggests, or better than what they put on tape to this point. Tree that in the same way, I think Tree is Pritchett-esque upside in the sense that he's a pretty dominant tackle prospect in spurts, but right now it's only been in spurts. We haven't seen it consistently. Need to see that more consistently. So I like what they've done in the offensive line. Wide receiver again. I think Quasi Gilmer is a sneaky nice ad and one that they worked fast to. I think you again. The portal is as much about, at least the way I grade it, it's as much about landing but also keeping. And to this point, I think Deikiel Shorts has done a really good job adding to that room, but also retaining guys that were, I mean, the noise was loud for a reason, through a lot of December about Ja'Cory Barney and potentially even Isaiah Hunter and others in that room. They've kept the guys they want to keep in that room, at least to this point. Again, we've got another day. The staff's going to be sweating till the portal officially closes, of course. Matt Rule hinted at that last offseason when he joked about Ja'Cory calling him on the last day of the portal just to ask him about a steak recipe or something. But it just freaked him out. But that is kind of how it is. But you have to give some credit to Deikiel, I think, for keeping that room intact. Tight end, I know people have wanted to see some movement in there. I would say, I mean, they believe in Luke Lindenmeyer. They believe in what a healthy Carter Nelson and Matt Markway can be. And there's a lot of belief, I think, in Luke Sorensen, the incoming
Oh yeah,
freshman, as
they
a
love
well-rounded
Luke
guy.
Sorensen. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a guy that's going to come in and play. Like that's a guy that there's not going to be a whole lot of waiting around for him. He's got massive features in addition to a frame that's ready to take on Big Ten content. A guy that is a weight room junkie, and I put it on the board too. And Mike, I don't know if you'd agree with me, but in terms of what Nebraska wants from like that second or even third tight end in those 12 and 13 personnel packages, Caden Echternock and Eric Ingwerson are perfectly capable of providing that.
Eckler was playing at times last year, right? Like
Yeah.
he was getting involved and not just like in Houston Christian Akron. Like I think he was out
No,
there
he
in
was
Big Ten
down the
play.
stretch
Yeah.
in Big Ten play, like
Yeah.
getting run in there as the second or even third tight end. So I think there's like that's a room they didn't need to make additions to, and they haven't for a reason. I mean, I think the defensive line is going to be that big question mark of did they make the right additions? I think it's still a question mark. You like what they've added to the room. I think I like what they've added between Berberia, Whittington. If they're able to close on Behrman and add, one to two more. I think if you add a big body like a Terrence Green, you feel a lot better about the state of the room. Running back's going to be another big question. Linebacker, like what they've done there again, and on top of just adding to the room, you didn't lose Dawson Merritt. There was some like noise there. I mean, Alabama's seen some movement from their Wolf room. That's where Dawson flipped away from, and there's hypothetically a quicker path to playing time for him there. Michigan hired, Alex Whittingham and a guy that has some familiarity from his time at Kansas City. Nebraska was able to keep Dawson Merritt on campus, Pierce Newberry on campus. Vincent Shavers, of course, the linebackers they wanted to keep on campus in addition to improving the room. So I think right now, but the guys I think have done the best job: Rob Dvorak, Jeep Wade, Lonnie Teasley. Addison Williams sneaky just because again keeping the guys you want to in that room, the guys stuck around, and then adding to the room. I think obviously McDougall's the surefire starter ad, but talking with some people in the building, like there's a belief in Victor Evans, and even Jason Shiggs, just in their ability to contribute in year one. Maybe not as starters necessarily, but we know how much Nebraska likes to rotate, specifically in the secondary. And these guys are going to play a good bit of snaps for Nebraska, and there's a lot of belief in both of those guys. Shiggs in particular, I think, as a run defender, which is something Nebraska didn't get good enough play at consistently at the third level. I think there's a lot of belief in what those guys will add to the room.
Yeah. I am curious. Do you think with what Nebraska has built with its line, going through the portal, getting Brendan Black, getting Paul Mabenga, getting Tree Babalade, and you're putting those, assuming with Elijah Pritchett and Justin Evans? I mean, just as an assumption here on January, I don't even know what date it is. January 15th. There we go. I can look at a calendar. Just an assumption here. Like that seems like those could be your 5 starting offensive linemen. Does that having that group, having Jeep Wade, make you a little bit more intrigued? And maybe you already were, but maybe does it make the addition of Calandria and his running a little bit more intriguing when you see what they've done up front with the offensive line? The follow up to that also, does it make running back a little less imperative if you build up your line and your line is able to move people? Maybe you don't have a top end running back or you don't have an All American in Emmett Johnson, but you're still able to have an effective run game because you're moving people better.
Yeah, I mean, so to the I think both of that is fair. Like I thought it was really surprising when a little bit surprising when Dana Holgorsen was talking about Jeep and just mentioned, like the time to watch the tape is in January. I just kind of figured he'd watch the Georgia Tech tape from last year and be really intrigued in just what Jeep did with that offensive line and the opportunity to build out a QB run game. I think that's been at the top of my mind since Jeep was hired of what this QB run game could look
It
like.
seems
And I
like
was
that has
intrigued.
to be a part of it. That
Yes,
has to be a big
absolutely.
part of it.
Yeah, and Calandria is not like as big as Haynes King, but there's a lot of that in terms of how he runs and moves around in the pocket. Like there's a lot of that there where I don't think it's too crazy to build that out. The QB counters, QB power, some of that stuff that they did with him. And to the second point, I mean, the staff themselves have said like a good run game is based on the line, not the running back. And again, I thought there were times this year where I didn't think the offensive line got enough credit for what they were doing in the run game to help Emmett. I mean, Emmett did a lot to maximize the yardage he was getting and maximize the output, and maximize each carry. But I thought the line did a really good job throughout the year helping him. Yeah, they've gotten even bigger though, and you've gotten a room now where yeah, I think there's that belief in Mackay, Mosey, and others behind them. I think you would still, I mean, I would still say you would still want to see them make an addition to the room. I am pretty at this point now that we're coming out of this dead period. Still just a little surprised at the lack of movement there, but yeah, I mean, I can they are they fully capable at this point of having, at the very least, a capable run game with the guys in the room, with Calandria adding to it, and some I think creative packages with what how you could potentially use Jenner and Bond or Ja'Cory Barney and those guys, and even maybe working in other quarterbacks from the roster or whatever that looks like next year. Like they can have a capable run game, but you would like to make it a strength and like to make it that strength by having I think an established back in there to help Mackay and Mosey and the others in that room come along.
You mentioning Janiran Bonner makes me remember what a big loss it was to not have him for the final 12 games of the season after he was injured in that Cincinnati game. I mean, I don't know that it changes everything, but I certainly think their short yardage and their red zone would have been more interesting with him on the field and that skill set than what it was. That's something I hadn't thought of, and I hope he comes back really healthy because I like that kid a lot. All right, we have been doing this with all of our guests this week, and to kind of mix results. They've all enjoyed it in their own way. Even Brian Christopherson, who didn't quite understand what he was being roped into. But we're going to do some blind rankings here with Tim, and we're going to go. Today's topic is going to be 2027 targets for Nebraska. Tim is going to rank them blindly, not knowing what comes next, 1 through 5. He says he's familiar with it. And so we are going to start with, if I can find my notes from earlier. All right, I can't, but I know what I'm going to go with here. We are going to go with Albert Simeon, offensive lineman, someone that has been to Nebraska
Oh,
several times. Where are you going to put him 1 through 5 on your list?
5. I'll put him. I think I'll slot him in at 3 right now. I think he's super talented, and I love his junior tape and even his sophomore tape. A lot of fun to watch. He's a mauler, like kind of one of those like true, just like he gets hands on you, you're wing backwards, and has that offensive tackle, offensive interior offensive line versatility. Um, that said, is an interior projection? Nebraska has a couple options there, and the ceiling is really high, but from a floor standpoint, you can find prospects with that floor. And Nebraska's pretty in the weeds or pretty far along with some interior line prospects that can provide a similar floor at least.
All right. I don't know that this is a slam dunk at 1, but I'd be surprised if it goes lower than 2. Ahmad Hudson.
Yeah, one. I think one. I mean, just because what he like the impact of that commitment for the football and basketball side of things. What I mean, talking to him last week about what the role Nebraska has for him. I mean, it's a very specific role that they've not really pitched to anyone else. It's a unique kind of jumbo wide receiver type role that would do some different things in the offense. And I think again, like the you think about what you want this offense to be in 27 when you add Trey Taylor, when you add some of these guys, and what this wants to look like down the line. Adding Ahmad Hudson is like a big piece to like what this offense could look like versus what it will look like. You know what I mean? Like I think that's a big question in terms of I think he shapes a lot of what this offense's identity could be if he's on campus.
All right. So we have tight end Ahmad Hudson at 1. 2 is open. 3, we have interior offensive line Albert Simeon. 4 and 5 still available. 2, 4, and 5. Let's go, Duve Williams.
Ooh. I think 5. I like Duve a lot. But getting to see him compared to a couple other DB targets on Nebraska's board last week at the All American Bowl, plus getting to see, I mean, on the 7-on-7 circuit in general, we've seen a couple of these Nebraska targets and where Nebraska stands in that recruitment relatively. That's USC's recruitment to lose. I mean, it's been that way since like last summer. Like I remember he showed up at the Huddle Futures Forum, and me and Greg, our friend here at Rivals, talked to him, And I immediately turned to Greg after the interview and was like, "Oh, he's like basically a silent to USC, isn't he?" And he was like, "Yeah, I mean, pretty much." Like, so I think it's USC, likely USC bound, but Nebraska's doing what they can. I mean, he's one of the Nebraska's one of the few out of state schools he's really giving a look to. That said, I mean, if you're looking at the corners Nebraska likes and wants in this cycle, Aaron Washington did commit to USC this past weekend. Nebraska is going to work to flip him. Again, he doesn't intend on doing that. We'll see if they're any luck. But I think Aaron has a little more to him as just a pure corner. Jalen Hill, who Nebraska likes, another Southern California Cali, a 6'3" longer corner, and another one that again more like I think of better is in pure coverage. I like Duve a lot. Really good athlete, two-way guy, good personality, and one of those guys where I think the impact of landing a Williams would resonate in Southern California, like that just the impact of that type of ad, who he is, kind of his impact on other players in Southern California. I think it's more of that impact more so than what he is as a player. But like, I mean, objectively, the other Southern Cali corner thereafter, Juju Johnson, I would put Juju over him if there was another corner on this in this ranking.
All right. Well, let's see what's next. We're gonna go down to your home state of Texas and Kennedy Brown, offensive tackle, offensive lineman, Kennedy Brown.
Oh,
2
yeah.
and
I
4
mean, this has to
remaining.
go. Yeah, this would have to go too, and this would be one where Nebraska has a lot of ground to make up now at this point, just where things are at. But I mean, G. Boyd's been in touch, Lonnie Teasley's been in touch. They're going to try and get him back on campus. We'll see. But I mean, yeah, there's not a this is a plug and play kind of tackle prospect, and this is regardless of the measurables. You look at the height, and he may not be like what you're looking for. He's got the wingspan for it. He's got the length for it. He's got the play style. Like he's a guy that you could plug in either side, left, right, even movement side if you need him to. He'll be perfectly fine. A freakish strength. I mean, freakish athlete. Just like again, there's a reason he's got. I mean, options coast to coast. He can pretty much pick his school at this point and pick a number. And most schools would be willing to meet him there. That level of talent. Yeah, like the only reason he'd be two behind Ahmad is when he comes second in terms of the names mentioned, but also I think again Ahmad is a guy that they're building this offense around. They have a couple tackles they're in it for that they believe in. But yeah, like what having that kind of guy, whatever side of the line it is, but as you're booking tackle for 3-4 years, changes a lot in terms of how this program could be able to manage money and manage the roster over the next couple of years.
All right. So we had Ahmad Hudson at 1, Kennedy Brown at 2. We have Albert Simeon at 3. 4 is open. Duve Williams at 5. Your fifth player going at number 4 is going to be KJ Green.
Ooh,
Yeah,
interesting.
it's a pretty loaded list. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna lie.
If I could, I would probably flip KJ and Albert, to be honest, just because of what KJ. I mean, KJ is a dominant pass rusher. Like what he's
Yeah, no,
done
I
in the
mean there
state of
you could
Georgia.
argue KJ is as big of a need as anybody has in the country just
Right.
because of what pass rush is.
Right. Yeah. And so, but then that's another one where, like, we'll see. Roy Manning's just starting to sink his teeth into that recruitment. I noted yesterday, just Nebraska's after some edge rushers building out a board. He wasn't mentioned just because there's some ground to be made up there. A couple programs closer to home he likes, but the first time he visited Nebraska, he really liked it. He's kept in regular contact with the staff. Just a matter of getting him back, kind of showing him this is the defense he can attack in. I think obviously, he was pitched on some stuff last year, but then the play of the defense didn't really match up with what he was pitched on. If they can turn that around, kind of can show him this spring that there's a better plan and a better opportunity for him to get after the quarterback. I mean, even if it takes Roy Manning just showing him the production that Trey White and Ryan Anderson had last year at San Diego State, just that alone. I'd like to see Nebraska get back into it. I actually exchanged some text messages with him yesterday. He's been texting with Manning, was actually hoping to make it up for junior day here at the end of the month, just wasn't able to make things work. So there's definitely some interest. He's working to get back to campus. It's just at this point, some ground to make up, and it's going to be tough to pull a guy like that from SEC country.
Yeah, let's stick with some 2027 stuff. Just in general, all of these coaching changes, does that set Nebraska back at all with such a great year in terms of bringing in a lot of these 2027 guys for games? Like, do they Is it, you mentioned Jeep Wade and Kennedy Brown. Some of it is these are elite players. So they're every team in the country is recruiting you. Nebraska's going to have to make up ground in some way, shape, or form. But do you feel like the coaching changes has them having to kind of make up some ground or opens up other players as well?
Yeah, so what's actually interesting in talking to offensive linemen, there's some that that visited campus before or were previously like had shown some interest in Nebraska, but things had gotten cold. That were suddenly reinterested. I mean, even Mark Matthews, five-star tackle out of St. Thomas
Thought about
Aquinas down in
including
Fort
him.
Lauderdale. I mean, yeah, he's another one where he is a little more interested now. Trey's going to spend some time, work to get him back on campus. He'd like to be back. They'd like to get him back for a practice just so he can see Jeep Wade, Lonnie Teasley in action. And it helps, I think, adding both of those guys with with prior experience and relationships from their previous stops helps a ton. There wasn't too much ground. Like there was a lot of guys that Nebraska was battling South Carolina and Georgia Tech for. Joshua Sam Appel for one, I think out of Douglas County. Jordan Agbanoma, 4-star, another monster interior line prospect out of Grayson High School, the powerhouse program out there in Atlanta. Both those guys, Nebraska was already battling Georgia Tech and South Carolina for. Now they have those two position coaches working at Nebraska. So with Jordan, at least it's definitely caught his attention. He's working to get back to campus. And they're for sure in some battles. I mean, they want to be, when it comes to offensive line talent, you want to be in these battles. You want to be battling the top SEC and Big Ten programs for the best in the country. Now it's a matter of, okay, Jeep Wade, Lonnie Teasley, you guys together, can you land some of this talent? We're paying you money to win these recruitments and develop these guys. Can you do that? That's what I'm curious to see over these next few months. But there's a lot more excitement, at least on the offensive line now, in talking to recruits. I would say other positions. I mean, secondary. There hasn't been a whole lot of shift because of the consistency of Addison Williams, but like changes elsewhere. I think Oregon in particular has some ground to make up with some guys now, just because of the shift in um, the coaching changes there. Obviously, some of the coaching changes elsewhere making an impact, giving Nebraska an angle. I'm really curious, honestly, with the safety position. Nebraska's well positioned there with a few guys, and you've seen some turnover at Georgia Tech, at A&M, at some of these programs that they were battling for some of these top safety prospects for. That helps Nebraska secure visits and close here in the spring. Where I think they've been hurt, I would say receiver, just because of the movement elsewhere and their relative where they stand with receivers right now. It's nothing that they're doing to themselves. It is just like the mass movement of receiver talent and quarterback movement and all of that. Like that's a position where I feel like more so every year now you're seeing serious fluctuations in what the favorite schools are, more so than other positions. Like for the most part, I think offensive line, defensive line, you see the same schools pop up. If a guy has a favorite of whatever, these pop up. At receiver, I feel like it's changing a lot faster than it used to. So receivers one, and that's something where at the end of the day, receivers a position you can find plenty of talent at, and there's going to be plenty of options. Guys do still want to play with Trey Taylor, and he's doing what he can on the 7-on-7 circuit. Like I'm really curious to see now Brian Hardline leaving Ohio State. How open is the window for Jameer Brown, number one receiver in the country, committed to Ohio State? But he's really close with Trey Taylor. They've talked about playing together for a long time. Jameer is a long time committed to Ohio State at this point, and now he's in like at least he's entertaining visits with the idea of taking visits now that Hartline's moved on and Curtis Hankton's taken over. We'll see if that does anything for Nebraska, what other opportunities pop up for Nebraska at the receiver room. But that's where I've seen the biggest change, I think, from this coaching cycle.
Is receiver one of those positions, and not that you should do this all the time, but if you're not able to get top end guys at a high school, do you almost just think, hey, we're going to take our swings in the portal because there's so many receivers in the transfer portal every year. Like it feels like one of those positions, kind of like defensive back, where if you're not able to get it on the front end, it's not a panic inducing thing because there's going to be so many of them available in the portal. It's about evaluating and finding the right fit for you when you can get a better view of when they've kind of grown into their body a little bit more.
Yeah, there's some of that, and I think that's why you're seeing some teams, they miss out on. I mean, even Nebraska Nebraska, I think, does this where they build out the top end of the board with some of these top receiver prospects nationally. But the back end is some smart evals, guys that they won't necessarily have to. When you're allocating money, you don't have to spend a whole lot of money relatively for you bring those guys in and you bank on those traits that maybe they're not year one type guys like some of the guys year one contributors like the guys at the top of your board are, but there's some traits, there's some stuff there. I mean, Nebraska feels that way about Justin Lindsay out of Lee Summit North, Chris Harris Jr. Out of Lee Summit West, two guys that are I think still by on three don't have any stars by their name, but have some legit offers, and Nebraska would take those guys if they were to try and commit. Like Nebraska sees those guys as okay, maybe not year one contributors, but 1-2 years down the line, these guys can work into the rotation, can play, and can give Nebraska something. And on top of that, if you need some immediate contribution, you can find that honestly better and more, maybe not consistently, but you have a better idea of what you're getting, like you mentioned, kind of out of the portal. I mean, Nebraska okay, Nebraska this cycle, like went and plucked Quasi Gilmer. Is there how many receiver prospects in this 26 class could have the tape, have the polish and the well-round the skill set, but also the like what you're getting in them in a Quasi Gilmer at the same price. Like you have to pay probably I mean, I'm ballparking where Nebraska spent, but you're going to have to pay like 200, 300K plus more, if not like, on the top end of like a million plus for a receiver that brings the skill set that you just got out of Gilmer out of the transfer portal.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things that as we get deeper into the portal era, how people construct their roster, the contingency plans, where they choose to spend, how that's allocated, it's all fascinating. It's why it's so much more than just what it used to be, where you'd have a small personnel department that handled everything and all of that. That's why it's built out the way the way that it is. Justin Lindsay, you mentioned him. There's a guy that we watched at Nebraska's camp, one of the Friday Night Lights camps this past year, and he immediately, just from a physical size standpoint, jumped off the page as, hey, that doesn't look like everybody else out there running routes.
Yeah, not at all. He's fun, man. I loved watching him run routes. I like watching his junior tape. The production still like isn't to the point where people want it. I think that's why the offer list is where it's at, and why
A
I think
lot of
even
projection.
Nebraska's a lot of projection there. But I couldn't shake when I was watching him in camp. He's not that obviously not making this comparison at all. But the way he moves at his size, and the way he works in and out of breaks at his size, it was like the first I've seen a couple of these since he's popped up, but like a guy that moves like Justin Jefferson a little bit, like that's how he kind of
Oh,
glides through routes. And you're starting to see more of that in guys, and that's how they try to run routes because of just it happens I mean, when Odell was popular, everyone wanted to run routes like Odell and do stuff like Odell. Like Justin's the guy right now. Everyone wants to run like him. And Justin has some of that where at his size, he is kind of it does kind of glide like that, breaks in and out like that. Our Andrew Marsh, I think, is similar from at Michigan. Andrew started picking that up, I think, sophomore junior year of high school, where he's not and Justin similar. They're not the fastest guys, but they use their body to create separation and
efficient
use their
mover.
length kind of. Yeah, really efficient movers, and they use their body to create movement rather than just pure speed.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Tim, let's shift gears a little bit away from some of the portal recruiting stuff. What are just your general thoughts on the conversation surrounding Nebraska and Mike Eckler right now? The special teams coach was here or is here. I mean, he hasn't gone anywhere yet. He's been here for a year, linked to this USC job. We on this show yesterday kind of talked about why this is a real thing and people shouldn't dismiss it, and that it's not new. And Nebraska is very prepared for the idea that he very well might be leaving, and money has absolutely nothing to do with it. What have you sort of heard, and what do you kind of make of the everything surrounding Mike Eckler and the fact that Matt Rule was just so openly candid on a podcast yesterday about here's what it is, this is what we've got.
That his candor yesterday was interesting, and then I mean, this morning put it up on our site. But yeah, I mean, it's trending towards he's not coming back. I mean, trending towards he's going to be at USC in 26. I think at this point, not hearing anything. At least here we're sitting at 12:45 to kind of counter that at this point. Still, kind of the belief is he's got his foot out the door. Going to be um, coaching at USC next year, and what that means. I mean. on one hand, you have a guy that in Eckler who's he's not been anywhere very long. You saw someone did that, but like his average time at a school is 1.7. Now, that said, he did come in with this is his home, it's where he's from, wanted to do something where he's from, that connection, and you wonder a little bit, okay, how come, what changed, in a year of like wanting to be closer to home and some of that stuff. There's some of that of like, yeah, it's not nothing really to do with money, more so just again, they had open positions, they've had opportunities to kind of, potentially interview him and he's not been considered. And everyone has their own prerogatives, you know what I mean, in terms of how they feel about things, how they you know I think it's my personal belief on this in general, and just with is it's important to learn, as you as said, throughout grow throughout your career, to know what you're good at and know your niche and settle into that niche. Some people aren't satisfied with that. Some people want more, and it's always good to want more. So I think I'm never going to shame someone for driving for more, but when you're good at something, you have an opportunity to be good at something. I think a lot of coaches, I think, get away from that. It's why we lose some of the skill set and some of the talent we have, in and some of the just the brains we have in some of these spaces, because they want to do more, and they want to be whatever it is. And so here you're looking at, like, I mean, a guy that it would really suck for Nebraska to kind of lose him just because of the impact he made in special teams. And I would I mean, again, the rules made it sound like the idea would be just to keep it rolling within, because the way Eckler teaches, and I think that's part of this too. And I think you've seen that at the places Eckler's been, the places he has been at, he has laid enough of a groundwork and laid enough of foundation where they can kind of pick it and keep running that stuff without him. But there's the energy that he brings. There's also I think the enthusiasm and the willingness to hunt, the willingness to to strive from him, Eckler, to strive for any edge you can find in the game that you may not find in whoever his replacement is. You may not have that, that same, I mean, not just energy, but the same drive to succeed, that Eckler brings in. And again, a guy that this is all his. At the end of the day, you can get away from so many things. I mean, it's just like the Shanahan. It's the NFL Shanahan tree. You can get away from the Shanahan tree. At the end of the day, everyone runs up against that guy, and it's still like, he's still the guy. Like he's still the guy that does it better than anybody else. You see what he's working with, right now. Like it's just there's nothing like the original. There's nothing like the guy that did it all himself. And so the hope is, Nebraska's learned enough where special teams, at least from here, drops back from being a weapon to competent, rather than a weapon to, a complete liability like it was, for a lot of the first 2 years Rule was here.
Yeah, I do wonder if what you described there, that drive to find the edge, to drive to find the next thing, the thing about Eckler that always kind of stands out is he's never like satisfied. And so then if you extrapolate that to what it is, like he's presided over really great special teams. Part of that success is he doesn't look at it and think, well, we've done this, so we just have to match it. He wants to do more. And so I think, again, if you look at that as a person, it seems like he wants to do more than just be a special teams coordinator now. And so
Right.
I look at that with Nebraska, and I think Nebraska's like, okay, that's great, but this is what we want from you. And it's maybe just not the fit that it was a year ago. And I think that's okay too. It's unfortunate, but the longer, or as this has sort of played out, and what I had heard and kind of what I had talked about yesterday, Tim, is I don't think there's anything Nebraska could have done to keep them shy of something that they absolutely weren't going to do. So,
Right.
we'll see again how it plays out. And the big question, you've mentioned this elsewhere, is sort of the idea of, if he goes in and it happens before the portal were to close, what does that do with some of the specialists that he's either brought in or with guys that Nebraska's pursuing? So that's kind of a really sort of fascinating look at all of it.
Yeah, it's the part of this that I think is the most interesting, because I mean, you have the guys here. I mean, and that's what, like, I don't think, like, Kyle Kinane, for example, I don't think he's going anywhere, because I
No.
don't think Brett Maher is going anywhere. Like, I don't think the kicking staff's going anywhere. I think there's been something established there. But like Archie Wilson, what happens there? What happens with the long snapper they just plucked out of the portal? Some of that stuff. So All of that stuff they'll have to figure out. But it like I think like you mentioned, like I think it's something to keep in mind when we talk about these moves because it's similar to like the Raiola situation too. Like people leaving the program is it's a two-way conversation. It's not simply, oh well, Nebraska didn't do enough to retain him. It's like you can give somebody everything they and it just might not be the right fit. Like you can give like people want different things sometimes. Like that's just kind of how these situations go. And you live in a world, I mean, this has always existed for coaches, but you live in a world now where someone else can offer exactly what they want and you may not. And it is not always related to money. It oftentimes is not like, I mean, I've tried to stress this multiple, like a lot of these decisions in the portal, in high school recruiting, in general, they don't solely come down to like money is a factor in it, but money ultimately is not even a separator. The money is often even or like less at times where they go. It's they are accepting places where there's something else there that fits better with what they want than what they're currently being offered.
All right, let's finish up today's show. We got the national championship is next week. We'll be able to recap it by the time Tim joins us again for another Building Blocks Thursday. But are you thinking that Indiana finishes off this dream season? Does Miami step up and come away with a win? What are you seeing with that game on Monday? How are you feeling about things?
My head tells me Indiana finishes is off just because I think there's a big coaching gap here. I think Cristobal's answer, or like
I
got
think
over.
there's a big coaching gap here. Yes, I
Yes,
agree.
yes, and I think Cristobal's gotten over some of his demons and gotten through. I mean, you don't get to this point without it, but this is going to be a game that comes down to how you manage the game, and this is like it's the the meme, the coughing baby versus like it's just that like these are going to be too so far apart in terms of how they manage games. Like Signetti's so efficient, exceptionally dialed, already probably has his plan on how he's going to manage all 60 minutes. Cristobal feels like in the moment is figuring out how he wants to plan out the next 30 seconds. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
It is wild. Like and it shows there's different ways to be successful with both. But man, with Miami, it's like their physical dominance is what allows them to get here. It's not like just X's and O's or anything like
yeah.
that. Or, it's just great player procurement, great putting people in positions to be successful, and then, going out and overwhelming. And Indiana, it's a combination of that combined with like just incredible awareness. I continue to think that pick six against Oregon was something they found, that they had a tendency that they knew was coming, and that when that play even just started from the snap, that defensive back just knew where that was going. Not a great throw from Dante Moore. Like if
Yeah.
that goes more to the sidelines, probably not. But his break on that was as Moore was coming back to throw, and so it's just the Indiana, besides just being good, they're just really smart, and it's just
Yeah.
super super impressive. I mean, this is a prisoner of the moment type thing, but like if Indiana completes this and they go undefeated all the way through, do we have to consider them one of the best teams of all time with what they've done here? I
I
mean,
think
they've
so. I
beaten
mean, yeah.
everything put in front of them, and other than the game against Ohio State, they and Penn State challenged them too. I mean, they had to pull the rabbit out of the hat in that game, but they've largely just overwhelmed everyone they played.
Yeah, I think what's going to be held against them in the as we get away if they finish this job and the historical conversation is the margin of victory average and just like I mean the Nebraska team, the like all these teams we talk about, the greats, like they dominated all season, and Indiana for sure did that for a lot of the year, but there are for sure games in there where you could see it. And I think the star conversation is going to be somewhat held against them just in terms of most talented, but that doesn't matter. I mean, this is, I mean, already, I think before we even get to the national championship, this is the best coaching job, at least I've
Oh
seen
yeah.
with my
Oh
own
my.
two eyes, like by far.
I don't. I mean, and it's like I said, I think it's a disservice for other fan bases to be like, well, Kurt Signetti can do it. And it's like I don't think anything I don't think I've ever seen anything like
Nothing,
this
yeah,
in
nothing
any
about this is
sport,
replicable.
really.
You're not going to pluck another head coach with that level of continuity with his players and coaching staff and bring all of that. There just isn't a guy like that out there, like
Yeah.
it, and that are willing to stay too. I mean, in any other situation, like if they were not Brian Haynes and if Mike Shanahan, like if it wasn't those two guys, I mean, they're already gone for head coaching jobs. You know what I mean? But those two have stuck around. They're staying loyal. Maybe they'll be up for jobs again next year. But those guys have stuck around. They're sticking through with Signetti. And yeah, I mean, the most impressive thing for me was learning their work life balance staff. Like their Signetti being like, yeah, we don't have guys in the office just to be in the office. Like you get your work done, you go home. He's like, I'm in the office all the time, but the rest of these guys aren't. I thought that was really impressive. The fact they practice 4 times a week, an hour and a half, like it's a lot of people should study what they do in terms of, okay, well, how do you best prepare your athletes for competition? How do you make this as efficient as possible? But there's a lot that they do that's not one for one replicable. There's a lot of
Yeah.
lessons to be learned, but you can't replicate what they're doing.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. You can't replicate what Tim Verghese is doing. Some could try, but
No,
they
come on.
cannot replicate it. He's a 101 as well. And that's why we want him here on our Building Block Thursdays. Tim, thank you for joining Unemployed again. We're going to do it again next week. It's going to be great. The portal is going to be closed, so your life will slow down a little bit, but you got Junior Day around the
Yes.
corner. There's another signing day. We'll see if Nebraska got any other 2026 in the water. We didn't even get to the fact coaches are out on the road. Jeep Wade out there in the Metro today. Visiting
Yep,
Matt
making the
Erickson,
rounds.
among other things. So we'll have plenty to discuss next week here on another Building Blocks Thursday. Everybody, appreciate your time again today. Feedback Friday with Jack Mitchell tomorrow. If you have a blind ranking suggestion that you would like to force Jack Mitchell to have to rank, send it in to us, unemployed i80@gmail.com. I have one that I have in mind, but if I am open to suggestions. And then if you like the blind rankings, we'll keep going into next week with it. If you want them to go away, you feel like this detracts from the podcast, get it to us. Feedback Friday. We want your thoughts. Hit us up, unemployed i80@gmail.com. Thank you to everybody on YouTube today. Thank you to those in the chat. Thank you to the podcast listeners. Please like, subscribe, and we will catch you tomorrow on Feedback Friday.